The world stands on the edge of nuclear catastrophe, a moment in history where the threat of global conflict feels more real than ever before. The international community watches with bated breath, aware that a single miscalculation could have devastating consequences for millions. Tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States are reaching a boiling point, with each nation taking steps that raise the risk of open confrontation. The Middle East, already a region fraught with instability, now finds itself at the center of a potential nuclear flashpoint. In this volatile environment, Russia has publicly warned the US against any military action, making it clear that escalation could spiral out of control. Moscow has also accused Israel of undermining diplomatic efforts, suggesting that some parties are more interested in confrontation than in finding peaceful solutions. In response, Moscow is positioning itself as a mediator, reaching out to both allies and adversaries in hopes of de-escalating the crisis and preventing a wider war. However, the United States has swiftly rejected Russia's proposal for mediation, signaling a lack of trust and deep divisions among the world's major powers. Russia's warnings are not just rhetoric, they are calculated moves designed to pressure all parties toward restraint, urging leaders to step back from the brink rather than plunge into war. Most military analysts and foreign policy experts agree that Russia is unlikely to send troops into the conflict. Instead, it prefers to wield influence as a diplomatic power broker. By acting as a mediator rather than a combatant, Russia seeks to shape the outcome of the crisis while avoiding direct military entanglement. This approach allows Russia to maintain and even expand its influence in the Middle East, strengthening its relationships with key regional players. At the same time, Russia's involvement in the Middle East helps shift global attention away from its ongoing war in Ukraine, giving the Kremlin more room to maneuver on the world stage. By presenting itself as a voice of reason and stability, Russia aims to protect its strategic interests without risking a direct clash with the West. The Kremlin walks a delicate line, offering support to Iran and its allies while carefully avoiding any direct confrontation with the United States or Israel, both of whom remain wary of Moscow's intentions. The nuclear warning flashing across television screens is a stark reminder that the stakes are not just regional, but truly global in scope. For ordinary people around the world, the risks are real and immediate, fueling anxiety and uncertainty about what the future may hold. In this tense atmosphere, Russia signals that it will rely on diplomacy, not military force, in a bid to prevent a catastrophic conflict that could destabilize not just the Middle East, but the entire world. The coming days will test the resolve and wisdom of global leaders as never before. In a move that surprised many international observers, Russia formally offered to mediate the escalating crisis, stepping into the spotlight at a critical moment. By doing so, Moscow sought to position itself as a responsible global power, eager to be seen as a stabilizing force on the world stage. The Kremlin's proposal was carefully crafted, aiming not only to bring Iran and the US back to the negotiating table, but also to significantly boost Russia's influence in the volatile Middle East region. Moscow hoped to be recognized as an indispensable mediator, capable of bridging divides that others could not. However, the Trump administration flatly rejected the offer, dismissing Russia's initiative and telling Moscow to focus on its own affairs instead of interfering. This swift rejection underscored the deep mistrust and rivalry that has long defined relations between Washington and Moscow, making meaningful cooperation nearly impossible. For Russia, the offer was a calculated, low-risk move. If accepted, it would have elevated Moscow's prestige as a peace broker. But even in rejection, Russia could turn the situation to its advantage, blaming the US for escalating tensions and refusing dialogue. Now Russia can claim on the world stage that it made a genuine attempt to prevent war, presenting itself as the voice of reason amid chaos. Meanwhile, the US is painted as unwilling to pursue peace, further fueling anti-American sentiment in some quarters and complicating its diplomatic standing. This diplomatic chess match reveals the underlying motivations of both sides. Russia is eager to expand its influence and challenge US dominance, while the US prefers a strategy of maximum pressure and unilateral action. The failure of this overture narrows the already limited path to peace, making the prospect of military confrontation in the region more likely with each passing day. It's clear that Russia's mediation was never purely altruistic. It was a strategic maneuver designed to protect its own interests and directly challenge American dominance in the region. With diplomacy stalled and tensions rising, the risk of open conflict grows ever more real. leaving the world to wonder what the next move will be in this high-stakes geopolitical game. The US has taken an uncompromising stance toward Iran, openly considering military strikes. President Trump's administration demands Iran's total surrender on the nuclear issue, closing the door on diplomacy. Rejecting Russia's mediation, the US signals it will dictate terms, not negotiate. This unilateral approach aims to force Iran's compliance through overwhelming pressure. The policy's goal: permanently prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, even if it means war. Diplomatic channels are frozen, with Iran refusing talks under threat. The standoff has pushed the region closer to war, alarming the international community. The shadow of military conflict looms larger than ever. Israel has intensified its campaign against Iran, urging the US to take a tougher stance. Israel's objectives now include not just halting Iran's nuclear program, but also eliminating its missile capabilities. This expansion makes diplomacy far more difficult, demanding deeper concessions from Tehran. Israel backs its strategy with direct attacks on Iranian sites and proxies across the region. These strikes degrade Iran's military and send a message: Iran's defenses are vulnerable. Diplomatically, Israel lobbies for tougher sanctions and keeps the military option open. The pressure on Iran is immense, with little room for compromise. Iran's missile program is a core deterrent. Targeting it challenges Iran's security doctrine. The conflict has entered a more dangerous phase, with the risk of regional war rising. Israel's actions have made a peaceful solution even harder to achieve. Iran insists its military posture is defensive, responding to foreign aggression and threats. Tehran refuses to negotiate under US ultimatums, demanding talks based on mutual respect. Iran claims its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, as allowed by the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Recent attacks on its facilities have disrupted operations and created a gap in international oversight. The International Atomic Energy Agency can no longer fully monitor Iran's activities or account for its enriched uranium. This information blackout fuels fears of a secret weapons program. The lack of verification has pushed the crisis into a more perilous phase. Iran's defiance and the monitoring breakdown create global uncertainty. The world is left guessing about Iran's true intentions and capabilities. The pressure for preemptive action is mounting as trust erodes. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, now faces an unprecedented and deeply troubling crisis in Iran. For the first time in decades, the agency has lost its ability to effectively monitor Iran's nuclear activities, leaving a critical gap in global oversight and transparency. This sudden loss of visibility has sent shockwaves through the international community, raising urgent questions about what might be happening behind closed doors. Recent attacks on Iranian nuclear sites, combined with Tehran's swift and forceful responses, have resulted in the disconnection of surveillance equipment and the denial of access to international inspectors. Damaged cameras and halted inspections mean that crucial data is no longer being collected or shared. This growing blind spot leaves the world in the dark about the true size of Iran's nuclear stockpile, the status of its enrichment activities, and most importantly, its intentions. Without real-time monitoring, speculation and anxiety fill the void. Without independent verification, suspicions of a covert weapons program intensify. World leaders and experts alike worry that Iran could be advancing its nuclear capabilities in secret, far from the eyes of the global community. The breakdown in monitoring doesn't just threaten one country, it undermines the entire global non-proliferation regime. The credibility of international agreements and the trust between nations are now at stake. For countries like the United States and Israel, this lack of transparency is more than a concern. It's a red line. The absence of reliable information fuels calls for military options, as leaders fear the worst-case scenario may already be unfolding. The IAEA's inability to verify Iran's activities increases the risk of preemptive strikes, as nations may act on incomplete or inaccurate intelligence, escalating the situation even further. Iran, for its part, blames mounting international pressure for its actions, insisting that its nuclear program is peaceful. Yet, the result is a spiral of suspicion, diplomatic standoffs, and rising tension on all sides. The growing ambiguity surrounding Iran's nuclear program is pushing the already volatile Middle East closer to the brink of conflict, as neighboring countries prepare for the unknown. What began as a technical setback for the IAEA has now escalated into a full-blown geopolitical crisis, with the world anxiously watching and waiting for the next move. Russia's response to the Middle East crisis is restrained, shaped by its war in Ukraine. The Ukraine conflict drains Russia's resources, making Moscow wary of new entanglements. Russia's caution is evident; it avoids direct intervention, even for allies like Syria and Iran. When Israeli strikes hit Iran, Russia limits itself to diplomatic statements, not military support. Moscow's priority is to avoid a wider conflict that could stretch its capabilities further. Russia wants to remain a power broker, not a combatant in the Middle East. Its actions are guided by pragmatism and necessity, not ideology. The Ukraine war forces Russia to conserve strength and avoid opening a second front. Russia offers diplomatic support to Iran but avoids commitments that risk direct confrontation. Its Middle East strategy is crisis management, not intervention. The Russia-Iran partnership is strategic but limited. Iran supplied drones to Russia during the Ukraine war, deepening ties against the West. But when Iran faced Israeli strikes, Russia offered no meaningful military help. Moscow's support stopped short of a mutual defense pact. It won't risk direct conflict for Tehran. Russia also withholds advanced weapons sales to Iran, avoiding provocation of Israel and Saudi Arabia. The alliance is transactional, based on shared interests, not deep trust. Russia values its relationship with Iran, but not enough to jeopardize its own interests. Moscow's support is always measured and conditional. The partnership is about countering US influence, not ideological solidarity. Russia plays a long game, keeping its options open in a volatile region. The Middle East faces a dangerous impasse as diplomatic efforts collapse. America's threats, Israel's military actions, and Iran's defiance have created a volatile deadlock. A single miscalculation could ignite a much larger regional war. Russia's influence is limited by its own strategic concerns and poor relations with the West. The lack of great power cooperation makes peace elusive, pushing the region to the brink. Uncertainty over Iran's nuclear program fuels fear and suspicion. The risk of preemptive strikes grows as verification breaks down. Without renewed diplomacy, confrontation seems inevitable. The world stands at the edge of a catastrophic conflict with global consequences.